Good morning. How are you today? Oh, it's another day. Yeah, another day. We have been blessed to wake up and see. But somebody's doing evil. They should be doing good, but no, they want to do evil. Let's see what's going on.
Chosen one, a family member, made a deal with the devil, hired a warlock, went to war with you, and lost tragically. Somebody is begging for mercy right now, and it is not you. Somebody unleashed forces they could not control, and the boomerang returned with force. Somebody in your bloodline got desperate. Maybe money drove them. Maybe status consumed them. Maybe they wanted entry into circles where power moves in silence and wealth flows like water. But whatever they wanted, the price was you. They had to offer something valuable. They had to bring something to the table. And you were the offering. Not because you did anything to them, not because you deserved betrayal, but because something about your blood has been watched by people who operate in darkness for a long time. This family member didn't just wake up one day and decide to betray you. They were recruited. They were approached. Someone saw an opportunity and took it. Maybe at a gathering you don't know about. Maybe through connections you never suspected existed. Maybe through a lover who was sent to you first, to study you, to report back, to confirm that yes, this target carries what we've been looking for. Once they got confirmation, the real work began. They hired a warlock, not some amateur, not some weekend practitioner reading books and lighting candles. This was someone with bodies on their record, someone who's been doing this work for a long time, someone who practices magic so dark that even other practitioners won't touch it. This person has a whole laboratory of spells. They experiment constantly. They test different approaches. They pull tricks out of bags and hats and sleeves, like a mad scientist trying to find the right formula to break through your defenses. And they went to work on you with everything they had. Different frequencies, different entities, different rituals. They were trying to find your weak spot, trying to find the crack in your armor, trying to find the moment when your protection would slip just enough for them to get through. You might have felt it. Those nights when sleep wouldn't come. Those days when anxiety pressed down on your chest for no reason. Those moments when your intuition was screaming that something was wrong but you couldn't see the threat. That was the warfare. That was them experimenting on you like you were nothing more than a project. But here's what started breaking their confidence. Nothing worked. Every spell bounced back. Every hex reversed. Every entity they sent your way hit an invisible wall and couldn't get through. That confused everyone involved. That frustrated the warlock. That made them wonder who you really were. Because in their world, when they target someone this aggressively, that person falls. That person breaks. That person spirals into chaos and confusion, and eventually self-destruction. But you kept getting stronger. You kept healing. You kept moving forward. And that made desperation set in. Desperation makes practitioners reckless. When the warlock realized their usual methods weren't working, they made a choice that sealed their fate. They decided to try something unusual, something they'd never done before. Something that required going deeper into darkness than they'd ever gone before. They were going to conjure an entity that most practitioners know to leave alone. Something ancient, something hungry, something that doesn't follow orders well, but delivers devastating results when aimed at the right target. The family member paid extra for this. They scraped together resources. They made promises. They put up collateral, because the warlock told them this would work. This would finally break through your protection. This would finally take you down. So they performed rituals at specific times. They spilled blood. They signed contracts not just on paper, but in the spiritual realm. And they summoned something that should have stayed buried. This entity took one look at your protection and said no. It felt the ancient covering around you. It sensed the ancestors standing guard. It recognized that you weren't just some random person it could devour. You were sealed. You were claimed. You were marked by forces higher than anything they'd conjured. So this entity did what entities do when they can't reach their intended target. It turned around and grabbed the closest available host, the warlock. Now this practitioner walks around with something attached to them that won't shake off. It's inside them. It's feeding on them. It's taking them over piece by piece. Their hands shake. Their mind fractures. Their body transforms in ways that terrify them when they look in mirrors. They tried to perform rituals to release it, but the contract was binding. They try to negotiate, but it has no interest in negotiation. They try to fight, but you can't fight something that's already inside you. And every day it gets worse. Every day more of themselves slips away. Every day they understand more clearly that they made a mistake that's going to cost everything. The family member who paid for this watches in horror. They paid for your destruction, and instead they're witnessing the destruction of the only person who was supposed to protect them. The warlock is falling apart. The magic is backfiring. And now there's an entity loose that's angry, that's hungry, that's looking for more hosts. And guess who's next on the menu? Everyone involved in the ritual. Everyone who participated. Everyone who knew and said nothing. We need to talk specifically about why your blood was so important to these people. Why they were willing to pay so much, risk so much, orchestrate so much just to access it. Because this wasn't random. They didn't pick a target out of a hat. They knew something about you before your family member ever gave them details. They've been watching your bloodline for a long time. Your ancestors aren't regular. Your lineage carries something that most bloodlines lost generations ago. Maybe it's a direct connection to ancient priesthoods. Maybe it's a genetic memory of practices that have been forgotten by most of the world. Maybe it's a spiritual inheritance that gets passed down through blood and bone regardless of whether you're consciously aware of it. Whatever it is, people who study these things can sense it. They can see it in ways that have nothing to do with physical appearance. They can feel it when they're in proximity to you, even if they can't explain what they're feeling. Your blood carries codes, not just DNA in the scientific sense, but spiritual encoding that activates things, that opens doors, that grants access to frequencies most people can't reach anymore. In the hands of someone who knows how to use it, your blood could theoretically be used to enhance their practices, to amplify their power, to break through barriers that have kept them locked out of certain realms. But here's the thing they misunderstood. Your blood doesn't work like that. Your blood doesn't transfer power to people who take it without permission. Your blood carries protection. Your blood carries consciousness. Your blood knows the difference between sacred use and theft. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. When they tried to access it, when they tried to use it in rituals, when they tried to extract what they wanted from it, your blood rebelled. On a spiritual level, your blood recognized the violation. It recognized the theft. It recognized the darkness surrounding the people trying to use it. And instead of giving them what they wanted, it cursed them, it marked them, it created a backlash that's still playing out in their lives. The warlock might have gotten a sample somehow, maybe through the lover, maybe through the family member, maybe through means you never discovered. And when they used it in that final ritual, when they mixed it with their own blood and the blood of the entity they were summoning, they thought they were creating a connection that would give them power over you. What they actually created was a direct line for divine justice to flow back to them. What they actually did was mark themselves for consequences they're still experiencing. A lover was sent to you, someone who seemed perfect, someone who showed up at exactly the right time, saying exactly the right things. This wasn't fate bringing two souls together. This was strategy. This was a plant. This person was working with the family member and the warlock, and possibly an entire group of people who coordinate this kind of darkness. Their mission was simple. get close to you, gain your trust, create an opening, and most importantly, get your blood, because something about your blood obsessed these people. Something in your DNA they believed would give them power or knowledge or entry into realms they've been locked out of. Maybe they'd already studied it somehow. Maybe they'd gotten a sample when you were younger, and that's what started all of this. Maybe your blood carries codes that activate things in people who know how to use it. This lover was supposed to complete a ritual with you. Maybe get you to drink something. Maybe create a situation where your blood would be accessible. Maybe form a bond that would give them spiritual access to you. But your intuition saved you. You started feeling off about this person. You started noticing things that didn't add up. You started having dreams that warned you. And eventually, you listened. You walked away. You cut them off. You said no to something you didn't even fully understand was a trap. That decision changed everything. The ritual they'd been building toward for a long time couldn't be completed. The entity they'd summoned couldn't reach you through the lover. The access they thought they'd secured got denied. And when you walked away from that relationship, you triggered a chain reaction that's still playing out. The lover is on a chopping block now. Your ancestors marked them. The group that sent them is furious because they invested resources into planting this person in your life and it failed. The warlock is confused because their magic should have kept you blind, but somehow you saw through everything. You weren't just lucky. You weren't just cautious. You were being guided. Every time you felt that nudge to pull back, that was your ancestors. Every time you questioned something that looked fine on the surface, that was divine wisdom. Every time you chose yourself over pressure to stay in that connection, you were following protection that's been in place since before you were born. They thought they were playing you. The whole time the universe was playing them. Starseeds, they never expected this. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones. Press play. That's all. Start your Destiny Engine trial today. Risk-free. You switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. There's a coven. There's a network. There's an organized group of people who practice dark magic at levels most folks can't imagine. These aren't teenagers playing with cards. These are people with money, with status, with connections. People who sit at round tables making decisions about who rises and who falls. People who believe they have the right to manipulate reality for their own benefit. Some of them might be wealthy. Some of them might hold positions of authority. Some of them might move in circles where spiritual warfare is just another business transaction. They sacrifice animals. They perform rituals involving humans. They've taken people out before and covered it up. They kidnap. They study. They experiment. And when they heard about you, when they learned what's in your blood, when they understood what you represent, they wanted you, not to elevate you, to extract from you, to use you, to study what makes you different, so they could replicate it, or steal it, or destroy it. The family member was their entry point. This person signed contracts with these people, maybe when you were younger, maybe recently, but they agreed to deliver you. They agreed to provide access. They agreed to betray their own bloodline for promises of wealth and status and power. And for a while, they probably thought it was working. They probably felt important sitting at those tables with those people. They probably felt chosen, elevated, special. But now everything is falling apart. The group is in chaos. Because when you survived what should have ended you, when you walked away from the lover who was supposed to trap you, when you kept rising despite every attack they sent, questions started being asked. How is this person still standing? Who's protecting them? What kind of forces are we actually dealing with? And as those questions got asked, paranoia spread. People started suspecting each other. People started wondering who was going to get exposed first. People started trying to distance themselves from the operation before everything came crashing down. There's disharmony now where there used to be unity. There are arguments about money, about who's to blame, about what to do next. Some of them are experiencing health crises. Some of them are facing legal troubles. Some of them are dealing with financial collapse. This isn't coincidence. This is consequence. When you go to war with someone, the universe is protecting. When you participate in trying to sacrifice a chosen one, the cost comes due, and it comes due hard. Let's talk about how someone goes from having any love for you, or at least pretending to selling you out for promises made by people who practice darkness. This didn't happen overnight. This was a process. This was a series of choices that got progressively darker until they were so deep they couldn't see the way back. It might have started with financial stress. Maybe they were drowning in debt they couldn't tell anyone about. Maybe they'd made bad investments, or developed expensive habits, or lost money in ways they were too ashamed to admit. And when you're desperate, when you're scared, when you feel like you're running out of options, that's when darkness starts looking like salvation. That's when people start appearing in your life, offering solutions that sound too good to be true because they are. Someone approached them, maybe at a social gathering, maybe through a mutual connection, maybe online in spaces where people discuss things most folks don't believe in. And this person was smooth. This person was convincing. This person knew exactly what to say to make your family member feel seen, understood, valued. They probably started with small things, small favors, small exchanges, building trust, building debt, building obligation. Then came the real pitch, the one that required your family member to make a choice that would change everything. They were told about opportunities, about wealth that could be accessed if certain conditions were met, about doors that could open if certain offerings were made. And when they asked what kind of offerings, that's when your name came up. That's when they were told about your blood, about your lineage, about what you represent. That's when they were told that you were the key to everything they wanted. Your family member should have said no right there, should have walked away, should have protected you the way family is supposed to protect family. But they didn't. They started justifying it in their mind. They started telling themselves stories about how you'd be fine, how you wouldn't even know, how this was just spiritual stuff that probably wasn't even real anyway. They convinced themselves that their need was greater than your safety. They convinced themselves that the benefits outweighed the risks. They convinced themselves that this was somehow okay. So they started providing information, details about your life that only family would know, your routines, your vulnerabilities, your fears, your dreams. They handed over pieces of you like puzzle pieces, never quite admitting to themselves what picture those pieces would eventually form. They introduced you to the lover who was actually a plant. They encouraged connections that were actually traps. They created opportunities for the warlock to access you spiritually, all while smiling in your face, all while acting normal, all while pretending everything was fine. But something inside them was dying with every betrayal. Something inside them was rotting with every choice. You can't do that level of darkness to someone you're supposed to love without it changing you fundamentally. Your family member started having trouble sleeping, started seeing things in their peripheral vision, started feeling watched even when they were alone. That was their conscience trying to break through. That was the universe trying to warn them. That was divine mercy giving them chances to stop, to confess, to make it right before the consequences became irreversible. They ignored all of it. They were too deep, too invested, too committed to the promises they'd been made. So they kept going. They kept participating. They kept feeding information to people who were using it to try to destroy you. And they told themselves they'd make it up to you later. They told themselves that once they got what they wanted, they'd somehow protect you from whatever happened. They told themselves comfortable lies because the truth was too ugly to face. Then you started pulling away. Your intuition kicked in, and you started creating distance. You started asking fewer questions. You started sharing less. You started being less available, and your family member panicked. Because if you weren't close, if you weren't accessible, then the plans they'd made couldn't be executed. The rituals that required your presence couldn't be completed. The opportunities they'd been promised started slipping away, so they tried harder. They tried to guilt you back in. They tried to manipulate you back into proximity. They used every family obligation, every emotional trigger, every psychological button they knew how to push. But something in you was stronger than their manipulation. Something in you knew to stay away, even if you couldn't articulate why. And that distance saved your life. That boundary protected your energy. That wisdom you didn't even know you had kept you just out of reach of every trap they'd set. There were specific times when divine intervention happened in ways that saved your life, your sanity, your soul. Times when you were seconds away from danger and something shifted reality just enough to keep you safe. Remember that time you were supposed to be somewhere but something came up at the last minute and you had to cancel. That was intervention. The lover or the family member or someone else involved had plans for that meeting. A ritual was scheduled around your presence. Specific things needed to happen while you were in a specific location, and something divine made sure you weren't there, made sure your plans changed, made sure you were unreachable at exactly the moment they needed to reach you. Remember that time you suddenly felt sick or exhausted and stayed home when you'd been looking forward to going out. That was protection. Your body knew what your mind didn't. Your spirit sensed danger. Your consciousness couldn't identify, so you were physically prevented from walking into something that would have been catastrophic. The warlock might have been planning to approach you that night. The coven might have been gathered waiting for you to show up somewhere. The lover might have had instructions to complete a specific part of their mission, and divine forces said no, not today, not this one. Remember those dreams you had that were so vivid they felt real? The ones where you were fighting something you couldn't see. The ones where you were running through strange landscapes trying to escape something that was chasing you. Those weren't just dreams. Those were actual battles happening in the spiritual realm while your body slept. Your consciousness was being pulled into those spaces to defend yourself against attacks that were being launched. And you won those battles. You fought and you survived and you woke up tired but alive because your spirit is a warrior, even when your mind doesn't fully understand what's happening. There were moments when you said no to things you couldn't explain why you were refusing. Times when opportunities seemed good, but something inside you screamed danger. Times when people seemed trustworthy, but your gut told you to run. That was divine wisdom speaking through your intuition. That was your ancestors guiding you away from traps. That was the universe protecting you by giving you information you couldn't have accessed through logic or reason alone. You're not regular. You never were. You come from the stars. You're a child of the sun. You pull energy directly from source in ways that people who operate in darkness can't access anymore. Your blood doesn't just carry DNA. It carries ancient codes. It carries ancestral magic. It carries protection that was put in place before you took your first breath. There's something hidden about your birth, something about your purpose, something about why you're here that makes you untouchable to people like them. You might not have known it. You might have felt ordinary. You might have wondered why you always felt different or out of place or like you didn't belong. But that feeling, that was truth trying to break through. You don't belong in regular spaces because you weren't built for regular purposes. When you went to war with that entity in the spiritual realm, you wounded it. You sent it back. You defeated something that has probably taken down dozens of other targets, and you did it without even knowing you were fighting half the time. Those nightmares where you were in battle, that was real. Those moments when you woke up exhausted, you'd been fighting all night. Those days when you felt drained for no reason, you were defending yourself against attacks you couldn't see with physical eyes, and you won every single time. You're more powerful than the warlock. You're more protected than the family member understood. You're more connected than the coven realized. And when you transmute energy, when you send back what people send to you, it doesn't just reverse, it amplifies, it blows people back, it wounds them, it leaves marks on them that don't heal easily. That's the power of someone who operates in light. That's the authority of someone who's aligned with divine will. That's the force of someone who's here on assignment from realms these practitioners lost access to generations ago. Your protection isn't just one layer. It's not just your ancestors. It's not just divine favor. It's a whole system that was put in place specifically for you. When they tried to penetrate it, when they tried to find a weak spot, what they actually encountered was a fortress that's been building for generations. Your bloodline made agreements in the spiritual realm long before you were born. Covenants were established, seals were put in place. Your ancestors who walked in power, who knew how to navigate spiritual warfare, who understood the cost of protection, they set things up so that their descendants would never be vulnerable to the kind of darkness these people practice. Every generation that came before you added another layer, another wall, another guardian, another seal of protection. When the warlock sent those entities, when they performed those rituals, what happened in the spiritual realm was catastrophic for them. They're standing there thinking they're powerful, thinking they have authority, thinking their magic is strong enough to penetrate you, and then they see what's actually standing between them and you. They see the ancestral warriors, they see the divine forces, they see the seals that have been in place for centuries, and they realize in that moment that they're not just going up against you, they're going up against an entire lineage of power that they have no access to. That's when fear set in. That's when they should have stopped. That's when they should have refunded the money and walked away. But pride is a killer. Ego makes people stupid, so they kept pushing, they kept trying, they kept throwing more and more darkness at you, thinking eventually something would stick. But here's what they didn't understand. The more they attacked, the stronger your protection became, because every attack was recorded, every ritual was documented in the spiritual realm, every entity they sent was marked, and all of that evidence is now being used against them. Your protection is also intelligent. It's not just a passive shield, it actively responds to threats. When they sent confusion, your protection sent clarity. When they sent fear, your protection sent peace. When they sent entities to drain you, your protection sent those entities back to drain them instead. That's why the warlock is being consumed right now. That's why the family member is experiencing crisis after crisis. That's why the coven is falling apart. Your protection didn't just block their attacks. It weaponized those attacks and sent them back amplified. And here's the part that really breaks their minds. They can see you. They're watching you thrive. They're watching you heal. They're watching you step into more power, more clarity, more purpose, and they can't understand it. According to everything they know about magic, you should be destroyed by now. You should be broken. You should be in chaos. But you're not. You're flourishing. And that terrifies them more than anything else. Because if their most powerful magic couldn't touch you, what does that say about who you really are? The warlock who went to war with you is marked, not by you. You didn't have to lift a finger. They're marked by the very forces they tried to weaponize. The entity they summoned is still inside them, still feeding, still taking over, and there's no escape. There's no ritual strong enough to break that contract. There's no practitioner powerful enough to pull that thing out. They're experiencing exactly what they tried to inflict on you. The confusion, the terror, the feeling of being taken over by something you can't control, the nightmares, the paranoia, the sense that something is watching you, waiting, feeding on every moment of your fear. That's their reality now. That's their consequence. That's their prison. And it's not ending anytime soon. The family member who made the deal is living in a nightmare of their own making. They wanted wealth. They got crisis instead. They wanted status. They got shame instead. They wanted power. They got paranoia instead. Everything they were promised turned out to be lies. Everything they sacrificed you for amounted to nothing, and now they're stuck dealing with consequences while watching you thrive. You're healing. You're rising. You're stepping into levels they tried to prevent you from reaching, and they have to witness it. They have to see that their betrayal didn't work. They have to live with the knowledge that they sold out their own bloodline for empty promises. That's a burden that doesn't lift. That's a weight that doesn't ease. That's a regret that follows you to your grave. The group that coordinated all of this is experiencing systematic collapse. Some of them are facing legal troubles, criminal charges. Evidence is surfacing that connects them to things they thought were buried. Some of them are dealing with health crises that came out of nowhere, conditions that doctors can't quite explain or treat effectively. Some of them are experiencing financial ruin. Businesses are failing, investments are tanking, resources are drying up. Money that was supposed to come through never materializes. There's no unity anymore, no trust, no coordination. Everyone is trying to save themselves. Everyone is trying to distance themselves from what happened. Everyone is pointing fingers at everyone else. That's what happens when darkness turns on itself. That's what happens when divine justice moves through a group. It doesn't destroy everyone at once. It unravels them slowly, methodically, completely, until nothing remains but rubble and regret. This is your testimony, not a story of victimhood, but a story of victory. Not a tale of suffering, but a tale of strength. Not a narrative of what was done to you, but a revelation of what you're capable of. You are living proof that chosen ones don't break. You are walking evidence that divine protection is real. You are breathing confirmation that the universe doesn't let its soldiers fall. Every attack they sent taught you something about your strength. Every ritual they performed showed you something about your protection. Every entity they summoned proved something about your backing. You went to war and discovered you're a warrior. You faced darkness and discovered you're a light bearer. You were targeted for destruction and discovered you're indestructible when aligned with your purpose. Your intuition is sharper now. Your discernment is clearer now. Your boundaries are stronger now. Your confidence is deeper now, because you've been tested at levels most people never face, and you passed every single test. You've been attacked by forces most people don't believe exist, and you defeated every single one. You've been betrayed by people who should have protected you, and you rose anyway. This was never a fair fight. They thought it was, but it wasn't. They brought dark magic. You had divine favor. They brought rituals. You had ancestral armies. They brought entities. You had the Most High. There was never a scenario where they were going to win. There was never a timeline where you were going to fall. There was never a possibility where their plans were going to succeed. Tragic is the right word for their experience. Tragic that they chose darkness over light. Tragic that they valued temporary gain over eternal consequences. Tragic that they underestimated who you are and what you carry. Tragic that they went to war with someone they should have left alone, but their tragedy is your testimony. Their defeat is your victory. Their collapse is your confirmation. So, chosen one, understand what just happened. You didn't just survive spiritual warfare, you dominated it. You didn't just avoid destruction, you reversed it back on everyone who sent it. You didn't just make it through, you came out more powerful than you went in. That's not luck, that's not coincidence, that's destiny refusing to be denied. That's purpose, refusing to be stopped. That's a chosen one, operating in full authority. The war is over. You won. Those who dig graves for others often end up falling into them first. My dear chosen ones, Let that sink in. The karmic couple and their loyal little practitioner thought they were grave diggers of destiny. They believed they were architects of your downfall, orchestrators of chaos, masters of manipulation. But what they never calculated was this: the grave they dug wasn't for you. It was for themselves. That's the irony of playing games with energy. You never get to decide where the ricochet lands. Every generation has predators, the schemers, the whisperers, the manipulators who believe that shadows obey their commands. They move like chess players, thinking pawns and candles, spells and secrets will shift the board in their favor. The karmic couple you've been circling with, they thought manipulation was strategy and cruelty was cleverness. And their practitioner, that one believed tools, chants, and rituals made them untouchable. But chosen ones, here's the truth. The moment they touched you, they were no longer writing a script. They were signing a confession. See, my dear chosen ones, you are not just another name, another body in the room. You are a walking verdict. You are living proof that energy recognizes hierarchy, and no matter how elaborate the scheme, deception always kneels before authenticity. They didn't know this. They thought you were soft clay in their hands. They thought you were a page they could scribble on with lies. But you weren't the page. You were the pen. And every word they tried to write against you only etched their own ending deeper. Chosen ones, before we dive deeper, take a moment to stand with us. If this message is already stirring something inside you, if it's reminding you of the power you carry and exposing the weakness of those who tried to break you, then show your support. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and help us keep creating content that fuels your spirit, sharpens your vision, and pushes you higher. Your support isn't just for us. It's what keeps this family of chosen ones growing stronger together. Ask yourself this: why do manipulators always collapse under their own weight? Why do schemers get tangled in their own webs? Why do the loudest predators end up choking on silence? Science has shown us something they'll never admit. When people build their lives on manipulation, their brains and bodies can't handle the weight. Stress eats them alive. Paranoia drives them into corners. Lies turn into poison that leaks into their health, their money, their relationships. That's not magic. It's physics. That's not coincidence. It's consequence. But you, chosen ones, you are wired differently. You don't absorb poison. You reflect it. Attacks aimed at you don't land because they were never engineered for your frequency. You are too high, too sealed, too unbothered for that. And while they thought they were breaking you down, what they were really doing was unlocking the part of you that dismantles corruption without lifting a finger. Think about it. The karmic couple expected fireworks when their rituals were cast. They pictured you drowning, collapsing, begging for air. They thought their practitioner was their ultimate shield, their secret weapon, their iron wall. But walls are useless when the storm is coming from inside. They didn't realize you weren't their victim. You were their mirror. And when they sent shadows your way, those shadows took one look at you, saw no place to land, and turned right back around like homing missiles. That's why their lives are crumbling now. They call it bad luck. They call it stress. They call it betrayal. But chosen ones, you and I both know what it really is. It's the boomerang effect in full swing. They summoned shadows, but shadows don't stay loyal. They demanded payment, and the weakest link always pays first. It's not punishment. It's not even revenge. It's gravity. And here's the part that makes me laugh. Chosen ones. They thought the death angel would arrive with drama, lightning strikes, chaos in the streets, thunder that would shake the world. They thought they'd know when it arrived. But the real angel of death to deception doesn't need theatrics. It doesn't knock. It doesn't roar. It moves in silence. in subtleties, in moments so small they don't even notice until the whole foundation caves. While they were waiting for explosions, you just kept living. You laughed. You minded your business. You kept breathing while their house of cards collapsed in slow motion. So buckle in, chosen ones, because what they've just learned the hardest way possible is this. You don't call war on someone who is born as the ending. You don't summon storms against the storm itself. And you don't play chess against the board. They thought they were predators circling prey. But when they circled you, they circled their own ending. That's the beauty of being chosen. You don't need to fight with noise. You don't need to announce your power. Your very existence rewrites the script. Your presence alone flips the board. And while enemies scratch their heads trying to figure out why their spells boomerang, why their lies don't stick, why their health is failing and their alliances are breaking, you already know the answer. You are not here to collapse. You are here to be the collapse. Chosen ones, hold this truth close. Let it sharpen you. Let it remind you who you are. You don't dodge attacks. They dissolve on impact. You don't fear shadows. They fear you. And you don't need to prove anything to those who try to play hunter. Because the hunter is already in you, disguised as stillness, disguised as calm. And when the mask drops, it won't be your downfall they see. It will be their own. So here we are, the karmic couple, their practitioner, their rituals, their lies, their plots, all of it dissolving piece by piece, not because you fought harder, but because you stood taller. That's what it means to be chosen. That's what it means to be the death angel they never saw coming. They thought you were the target, but you were the verdict all along. And to you, yes, you, my chosen ones, thank you for being here in this moment. Whether this is your first time stepping into our circle, or you've been riding with us from the beginning, your presence fuels every word we bring forward. If you're ready to watch the karmic couple and their practitioner collapse under the weight of their own schemes, show it. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments, so we know you're walking this path with power. Every click, every comment, every bit of support keeps this energy alive and unstoppable. And now, let's step in deeper, because if you are truly chosen, you will recognize these signs as the very proof that you are the death angel they never saw coming. Let's get started. Number 1, when they unleashed darkness, it came back wearing your face. When they summoned shadows, the shadows carried your name back to them. He who lights a fire to burn another often ends up standing in the blaze himself. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the karmic couple and their practitioner. They thought they were masterminds, didn't they? Whispering in secret corners, setting up rituals, pulling strings as if the universe were a puppet show with them as directors. They thought shadows would march in line like obedient soldiers. They believed energy could be chained, ordered, and sent at will, like darkness was a dog they could train to attack you. But what they never considered was this: the leash was never in their hands. Chosen ones, here's the truth they couldn't calculate. The very moment they unleashed darkness toward you, it didn't march forward like an army. It spun around like a boomerang, seeking the closest place it could attach. And since your frequency doesn't absorb poison, since your spirit doesn't give shadows a place to rest, the energy had no choice but to return home. That's the part people don't talk about. Dark energy isn't loyal. It doesn't recognize masters. It always demands payment, and the weakest vessel always pays first. Have you ever noticed how manipulators end up consumed by their own schemes? How liars collapse under the weight of their own lies? It's not coincidence. It's not random. It's design. The karmic couple thought they were clever, hiding behind their practitioner, setting traps with candles, chants, and whispered instructions. But chosen ones, all they really did was pull the trigger on their own collapse. They weren't opening a door to your destruction. They were unlocking the chamber inside you that dismantles everything built on deceit. Think of it like this. Their curses were like alarms. Every ritual, every plot, every malicious word was another siren echoing back at them. They wanted silence for you, but they created noise for themselves. They wanted chains to bind you, but the links circled their own wrists. They wanted to build a pit for you, but gravity made sure they fell in first. This is what happens when they underestimate the chosen. They think they're sending shadows into battle, but those shadows recognize hierarchy. And when they looked at you, they didn't see weakness. They saw something they couldn't touch. My dear chosen ones, here's where the irony hits hardest. They thought they were writing your ending. They didn't realize they were drafting their own obituary. They can't understand now why everything is collapsing, why their health is deteriorating, why their money is slipping like sand through fingers, why relationships are crumbling like old bricks. They tell themselves it's bad luck. They blame stress. They cry about betrayal. But you know the truth. The shadows they weaponized didn't vanish. They simply went home. And here's a question you may be asking yourself. Why didn't it touch me? Why didn't it land? And the answer is simple. Because it was never engineered for your frequency. Darkness seeks out cracks, vulnerabilities, open doors. But chosen ones, your presence seals those cracks. You walk with a natural shield, not because you built one, but because you are one. The attack doesn't bounce off. It reconfigures. It redirects. It doesn't just fail. It reverses course. That's why their downfall feels so sudden to them. That's why they sit in confusion, asking themselves what went wrong. They thought they had control. They thought they had precision. But darkness doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about intentions. It doesn't care about promises. Once unleashed, it moves freely, and when it can't penetrate you, it eats the hand that released it. All they knew was that the ending arrived, and it wasn't yours. It was theirs. Chosen ones, this is why your silence is so lethal. To the untrained eye, it looks like passivity. To manipulators, it looks like defeat. But in reality, your silence is observation, your calmness is calculation, and your patience is the camouflage of a hunter waiting for the perfect strike. They thought they were the ones circling. They thought you were defenseless. But what they were really doing was circling their own demise. Your calmness is calculation, and your patience is the camouflage of a hunter waiting for the perfect strike. They thought they were the ones circling. They thought you were defenseless. But what they were really doing was circling their own demise. And the irony? They won't admit it, but deep down, they felt it.
Leo, what is the energy here surrounding Leo for the month? I think you've been going through a lot of changes, Leo. I think you've been going through a lot of changes. I don't think this has been like... You pulled the Death card here, ruling the reading, but you also have the World card in the outcome, but you have the Page of Wands here in the future, Two of Cups is your advice, something you're unaware of is the Wheel of Fortune here, you know, Hierophant in the challenge, Ten of Wands in your current energy. This isn't anything new that you're going through. This is something that you've been going through for a while. And for some of you Leos, it's felt quite heavy with the Ten of Wands. Or you've been carrying some burden here. It's felt like a burden. And some of you, I'm going to be really honest with you, Leo. I'm going to jump into like the fun stuff here in this reading here in a moment. But I think here that the Two of Cups being your advice with the Hierophant, some of you may need to rely on like a mentor or to find like a mentor or like a guide. Or I get here that whatever it is that you're going through isn't anything new. I mean, Death card, ruling the reading, World card in the outcome, you're almost done with it. Ten of Wands is making it to the finish line. It's been a burden. It's been a challenge. The Hierophant here in the challenge is, I think it's really challenged your beliefs. But the Wheel of Fortune being here in the position of something that you're unaware of here is that change is right on the horizon here for you. New paths opening up here. But something about you has changed a lot. And is changing. But it's been a slow process. It's not like something that's just happened overnight. It's been a slow, gradual process, and it's reshaped you, it's redefined you. It could even be your belief systems, the way you relate to people. It could be your values, it could be your morals. It could be a bunch of those things. It could be all those things. But it's interesting though too, because you've gone through a lot here, Leo. Because you've gone through a lot, you're now going to be a catalyst of growth for other people. You're now going to be a catalyst of growth for other people. So you're going to be the one with the Hierophant, Two of Cups here, to give positive guidance to other people. And I think you've gone through this deep maturity process here as well, Leo. Ten of Wands, Hierophant, Saturn is the Ten of Wands, Saturn and Sag. So Saturn deals with maturity, with getting old. But the Two of Cups as your advice is like with the Hierophant of the Challenge, you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and just things that you've learned. And maybe you already know that. Maybe you're already doing your thing. But the Two of Cups is like continue to share that knowledge and wisdom that you have and know that. Maybe you're already doing your thing. But the Two of Cups is like continue to share that knowledge and wisdom that you have and be a positive form of guidance for people, because I feel like you can help a lot of people. Now, this cruel world challenge is like trying to find someone who has the same beliefs, morals, values. You know,